Welcome to the Mitchell Center for Sustainability Solutions in our Sustainability Talk series. My name is David Hart. I'm the director here. It's great to have you with us. Just to remind you that the whole point of these kinds of talks and the whole point of the Mitchell Center is to grow our collective capacity to work together to tackle sustainability challenges, which really are things that involve thinking about the well-being of people and the well-being of the natural world and all the complex connections between them. And when we do that, we're often asking, how can we bring together different kinds of knowledge and know-how and creativity to create a sustainable future? And it would be nice if there were a simple answer to a question like that. Or if we could just snap our fingers and create a sustainable world. Turns out that's not going to happen. So one of the most important things we do at the Mitchell Center, in addition to striving to keep working on problems like that, is we actually really think it's important to do what we can to help train the next generation of leaders and problem solvers. And today we're showcasing a wonderful group of 8 students. It's a little different than our talks. These students are all leaders in the making. And they're working on a wide range of sustainability challenges, as you'll find out in a second. We've given them each 5 minutes to tell you about their work and why it matters. We call these lightning talks. That might be a bit hyperbolic, but you never know. I guess we'll find out. Students know that they've got 5 minutes to speak. So I will come up and we'll make the transition to the next speaker. So the very first talk is by Carissa Furtado, and the title is How is PFAS Impacting Maine Anglers? Welcome, Carissa.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carissa Furtado. I'm a second-year student studying environmental science and economics, and I'm going to be here today talking to you about PFAS is impacting Maine anglers. So first, how many people in this room know what PFAS are by a show of hands? Okay, so all of us are a little bit familiar, but just to summarize, PFAS are also known as forever chemicals. They have a very strong carbon fluoride bond, which causes them to be very useful in household products, like water-resistant clothing, different personal care items, etc. But that really strong bond also causes them to bioaccumulate and persist in our environment, hence forever chemicals. And it has also been known to be associated with different human health issues like reproductive issues, immunosuppression, and it's also known to be linked to different types of cancer. So a little bit about PFAS in Maine. There was a program through the state where they were using sludge, which is just a byproduct of a wastewater treatment plant, applied to agricultural land because it was known to have a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen, which is good for plants. But little did they know that it also contained a lot of PFAS in high concentrations. So then that land had a lot of PFAS in it as well. And it also got leached into nearby bodies of water and the groundwater, which became a problem. So in response to that, Maine began to test different areas to see the different levels of PFAS in bodies of water. And because they found high concentrations, they decided to revise their safe eating guidelines in 2023 to adjust for these high levels of PFAS in fish. And because of that, you can see that there are do not eat advisories in Fairfield and Brunswick, which is like this cluster right here. And there are also consumption limits in varying areas for varying bodies of water, where some areas you can't eat any, and some you can eat up to 12 fish per year. So through the research that I'm a part of, we wanted to see how are Maine anglers changing their behaviors in response to PFAS. So we sent out a survey to a sample of Maine fishing license holders, around 3,700, and we are currently in the early phases of processing and analyzing all of that data. But some of the questions we wanted to answer are what behaviors might change from the anglers, and we just want to know if they're concerned about environmental contaminants, specifically PFAS at all. And some very preliminary things that we have found is that anglers are moderately concerned about environmental contaminants and that they're mostly concerned about mercury and PFAS. And we also learned that they trust the Maine state consumption advisories, so we can assume that hopefully they're following those advisories. We have also found that around 89% of anglers say that they catch and release their fish, and around 20.2% of anglers said that they no longer consume the fish that they catch. And around 24% of anglers who decreased their consumption over the past year said that it was because of concern about environmental contaminants such as PFAS. So as we continue to analyze this data, we would like to see what different things we can find. It has to do with demographics. Just very interested to see what people want to know from our information as well. So I would just like to thank the rest of my research team, Caroline and Molly, for being here today, and the staff at the Mitchell Center for being able to have this talk today, and then also just the grants that allowed me to be able to help in this research as well. So thank you.
Schedule. So I'll welcome Jasmine Lamb, who's going to be giving a talk supporting sustainable energy initiatives within Wabanaki tribal nations.
So hi, my name is Jasmine Lamb. I'm a PhD student at the University of Maine, obviously, studying environmental and ecology sciences. I'm also a member of the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point. So the title of my presentation is Supporting Sustainable Energy Initiatives within Wabanaki Tribal Nations. So I'm going to try and rip through the past 3 years really quickly. So I've been involved in projects relating to energy justice for Wabanaki Nation since 2021. For anyone who isn't familiar with the term energy justice, it aims to address the harms of energy injustice, which include damage to the environment from fossil fuel and climate change damages, and also to address the unequal access to renewable energy and energy efficiency technology and its associated benefits like cost savings. I have a picture here of one of the hydropower dams on the Penobscot River as well as an example of energy injustice. So yeah, in 2021, I started out as an undergraduate research assistant with Dr. Klein. We were doing a project that aimed to determine what the preferences for alternative energy were for Penobscot Nation. And at that time, I expanded my work to my tribe at the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point. And then shortly after I started my PhD program, where I got started on our EPA STAR grant. And the part of the EPA STAR grant that relates to my dissertation is our community pilot study. So within the community pilot study, we have our Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Team, where there are at least one representative from each of the 5 tribal nations in Maine. I participate on the Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Team both as a researcher and as a participant for Pleasant Point. So yeah, basically we all meet monthly to discuss the research that we're doing as well as different intertribal grant applications. So the primary goals of our EPA STAR grant are to identify and compare the barriers, opportunities, and decision drivers for sustainable energy development for underserved communities. The Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Team is half of that. We also have a community sustainable energy team. And this is a little bit more about our EPA STAR grant. So it includes surveys and interviews of Wabanaki tribal members. And then also part of our research is to build capacity for sustainable energy development. We recently, just in the past couple of months, hired a Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Coordinator named Kelsey Flores, and she has been a really great asset to the tribes. We're also doing educational workshops as a part of our EPA STAR grant. I just came back from our window insert build at Pleasant Point, which counts for an educational workshop for Indian Township and Pleasant Point. And yeah, I'm not going to talk about all the intertribal grants, but there's examples of 5 of them there. So yeah, my dissertation is in autoethnography. For anyone who is not familiar with autoethnographies, it's a qualitative research method. So I'm basically writing about my lived experiences running the Survive Resilience Committee, which is one of the case studies that I focus on in my dissertation. And yeah, so it's kind of I've been learning while doing, and I'll be writing about that for my dissertation. I'm taking a case study approach for the Survivor Resilience Committee and a couple of the other citizen resilience committees for the other tribes. And kind of building on the interview and survey data that Dr. Klein and I did in 2021. Oops, already got to references. Sorry. But yeah, so just for more background on the Survivor Resilience Committee, we formed the committee in August of 2022, and the goal of the Resilience Committee was to address energy injustice in the Survivor community. So some examples of our projects are, we've done 2 window insert builds. We're currently doing a spray foam insulation initiative, a strategic energy plan. We did an energy audit program over the summer, and yeah, we are also working with the housing department at Pleasant Point on a heat pump program. So yeah, so I'm hoping that writing up this process will help other tribes to kind of like follow the model of having a tribal citizen committee to build capacity for sustainable energy development. And also, I think it's really important to include citizens in the sustainable energy transition and kind of centering the energy justice aspect of it. So I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
Introduction that we now have Greg Sims. This talk is titled Lobster Shell Composite Materials for Temporary Structural Applications.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Sims. I'm a staff member at the Advanced Structures and Composite Center, where I work as part of the SMART program. That's a partnership with Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the University of Maine that's funded by the Department of Energy. I'm also an PhD student in the Materials Science and Engineering program. Today I'll be talking about lobster shell composites that we're working on in the application of temporary structural materials. So why in the world would I be worried about temporary structural materials? And the reason for my concern is the fact that there are a tremendous amount of very vulnerable people, very vulnerable conditions living every day and night around the globe. If we take a look at just the global refugee population, it's gone from an average of 20 million a year to this year it's at 40 million. It's average refugees living outdoors. If we just take a look at our own backyard, there's 600,000 people living outside on any given night in the United States. And in both scenarios, whether it's here or abroad, these are people living in their most vulnerable state in their entire lives. And they're living in the most vulnerable way, exposed to the environment, exposed to fire, exposed to theft. And so I believe there's a significant need for a sustainable, durable, and temporary shelters. So if we're going to look at building temporary shelters, should we go straight to wood, our traditional building material? I would say we should consider other alternatives. And the reason that I say that is because wood buildings last hundreds of years. I'm talking about a temporary shelter that can last 3 years. If I just look at wood waste and make a composite out of it, those are overly costly for this application, and they often have toxic gases involved with them, and they're off gas. So I don't want to use engineered wood. And on top of all that, we just take a look at the United States, China, and Europe. 10 billion tons of construction demolition waste goes to landfill every year. So there's no reason to even consider wood if we're just going to throw it away at a very short period of time. I would rather leave wood in the forest to collect CO2, its higher value mission in life, or leave it to lower the cost of long-term durable housing. And so if I'm not going to use wood, what criteria should I judge my other material by? I'm still going to go back to wood because it's the benchmark for construction. And when structural engineers look at wood, there are some criteria that they look at to design a building. In particular, modulus of rupture, that's the bending, right? If you see a piece of wood and you press on the end of it, if you cross along, that's modulus of rupture. Or stress and compression, right? We put a lot of weight on our wood structures. Or shear strength, if you think about what a OSB panel does. But if I'm gonna look at alternative materials, I might take a look at other opportunities to look at. I might take a look at where some waste sources that I can put together to make a structural material? How about if I'm gonna do better than wood, I should look at resistance to burning, environmental resistance. I still need to be able to connect this thing just like I connect wood. So I gotta use common screws and nails and glues. So I gotta need that. But again, if I'm gonna look at another material, I look for something that's recyclable, biodegradable, compostable, you know. So just a little background where my material has come from. This was previously developed by the Navandek group here on the campus. It's a lobster shell composite. Previous research has shown it had good compression strength and good impact strength, and it had some ability to be injection molded. And it was also shown, at least on initial trials, to have biodegradation in water. In 2022, the SMART program took this on in specific application for temporary structural materials. Thank you. We used the benchmark of Eastern white pine for our comparison. The natural binder, I can't tell you what it is, but it's a waste product that comes from the agricultural industry, and there's plenty of it available. Lobster shells, there's 50,000 tons of those available every year. So we're going to take advantage of those. We took these two waste materials, put them together, and made test samples out of them through common practices. And what we found is that lobster shell composite is 1.25 times stronger than Eastern white pine. It's 2 times stronger than Eastern white pine in compression. I have achieved putting those two together in common practices. They do resist burning. They actually self-extinguish. I've glued and screwed them together, and in fact, it glues better with just water than it does any traditional adhesive, and it is recyclable and biodegradable in water. And why do I think, in conclusion of all this, I've shown that it has a good potential for structural applications. But I also want to say that if I commercialize this, I'm going to elevate a waste material and provide income for rural communities who need it the most. I will wrap up. The references.
Sonia Leone is going to be talking about language, impact of climate language on rural Maine community resilience initiatives. So,
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sonia Leone. I'm a research assistant in the School of Economics. I'm also a student of anthropology and sustainability. And today I'm going to be presenting my honors thesis research, which is titled The Impacts of Climate Language on Rural Maine Community Resilience Initiatives. So some background on this project. Over the past year, I've been working on an EPA-funded project with Dr. Klein and Dr. Noblet in the School of Economics, where we are studying the barriers, opportunities, and decision drivers of renewable energy adoption in underserved Maine communities. And if this sounds familiar, yes, this is the same project that Jasmine is working on. So you're not tripping. You've heard it before. And a large part of this research project is building relationships and co-developing research with Wabanaki and underserved community partners, where we developed research like surveys and interviews, and we also helped to implement renewable energy projects in these communities. Part of this process of implementation involves visiting communities for community workshops to see where the community is at, how they're feeling. And I noticed at my first workshop that there was actually a big resistance to climate language. Even if community members were excited about the energy savings that they could achieve, there was a resistance to renewable energy and climate change as language. So this led to the development of my research question for my honors thesis, which is how does climate language create barriers in underserved rural Maine communities? And how can organizations tailor this climate language to increase local openness to resilience initiatives? There are 3 hypotheses that are core to my study. The first being that politicized language like climate change and government funding are distrusted by many rural Mainers. Secondly, that conventional climate language can create an immediate resistance and hostility towards local resilience planning. And this resistance can come from preconceptions about political agendas, climate education access, and rural needs. Thirdly is a solution-based hypothesis, which is that place-based and co-developed language about climate change can increase community openness and resilience to discussion and planning. Although I am in the first semester of my research, I do have some preliminary findings to share, which is that communities with limited capacity require certainty in climate language to justify investment in adaptation. Simultaneously,
climate skeptic language is virtually certain in a lot of its claims, which influences climate spending in the opposite direction that we're looking for. It can influence communities to decide this really isn't worth it because the skeptic language is far more certain than the scientific language. However, robust and co-produced adaptation projects don't depend on the certainty of climate change to achieve payoff. So for example, a co-produced research study can create mutual benefits of economic development, community level decision-making, and energy independence. The methods for my study thus far, I'm working on a literature review that looks at the effectiveness of climate language in underserved communities or lack thereof, as well as looking at the co-production of participatory research between institutions and communities. I'm also looking at survey data, which is one of our co-produced projects with our Wabanaki and community teams, where I'm going to be looking at a set number of questions about people's perceptions about climate language. This analysis will also have co-benefits for our partners in their understandings and use of climate language in future resilience projects. Thirdly, I'm going to be looking at interview data from interviewees of Maine resilience planning leaders and civilians. So I'm helping to facilitate a few of these interviews with targeted questions about community engagement, success, and barriers. And this is more of a top-level approach to the survey data. So I'm looking to have a really holistic understanding of climate language analysis. In terms of outcomes, obviously, I will be producing a thesis, which will be an analysis of co-produced place-based language through relationships between research institutions. However, as I mentioned, this analysis won't just be for me. It will be a beneficial data set for our Wabanaki and community partners moving forward into their own futures without us. Thirdly, I'm looking to carry this research forward in my own research and relationships and hopefully publication in the future. Thank you all very much for your time. Feel free to contact me for any questions or ask during the Q&A. Thank you.
So we'll see how my transition goes for the next one. But the speaker is Gianna DeJoy, and the title of her talk is called Midwife, a Sustainable Solution to Centralizing Maternity Care. I was in a group, discussion group with Gianna not too long ago. This should be great.
There we go. All right. Here's a Reddit post from October. The poster writes, "I'm so upset with the state of prenatal care in Maine. My local hospital 20 minutes from my home is too small to do VBACs, which stands for vaginal birth after cesarean. So they refer out to a larger hospital that is 45 minutes from my home. I just started my 3rd trimester and was trying to transfer care. I found out today that the larger hospital is denying all transfers. My small hospital gave me the option of traveling to 2 different hospitals, both over an hour from my home. I am due in the middle of January. The thought of driving over an hour, active labor, possibly in inclement weather, is not something I want to be doing. I am stuck. I have nowhere to give birth." This person's experience is reflective of a very real trend. 8 hospitals in Maine have stopped delivering babies since 2009, 5 of those since 2020, and a 9th is set to close. People living in many parts of Maine must drive several hours to reach a hospital offering comprehensive maternity care. This is not unique to our state. Following centuries of effort by the medical establishment to eradicate traditional midwives and foster dependence on obstetricians and hospital birth, the availability of rural maternity care is now in steep decline across North America. Today, millions of U.S. women live in counties with no midwifery or obstetric services. In parts of Canada, kids are waiting until their 9th month of pregnancy to see a maternity provider. Some remote Indigenous communities there still face policies of forced evacuation to birth in distant hospital settings. This crisis in access to care is costly socially and environmentally. I will argue that encouraging the growth of the midwifery profession, in particular community-based midwives, is a just and sustainable solution to this challenge. First, some more information on the problem. Living a long distance from care or in a community that loses local maternity services are both associated with a range of adverse outcomes for parent and infant. For some, being unable to birth in familiar and culturally appropriate settings can be traumatizing and dangerous. And as these comments on the original Reddit post illustrate, health resource losses are demoralizing for the larger community and can have significant sociodemographic, economic, and political ripple effects. Hundreds of thousands of pregnant people annually traveling long distance for prenatal care and birth also have implications for greenhouse gas emissions. So here's one example. Bridgeton Hospital in Bridgeton, Maine reported 54 births in fiscal year 2020. That hospital closed its maternity unit the following year. Nearest surviving obstetric hospital is Stevens Hospital, 18 miles away. So let's assume another 54 people within that original catchment, that's the circle, traveled an additional 18 miles on average each way for prenatal birth and postpartum care the year after Bridgeton's maternity unit closed. That's about 16 total hospital visits for a typical pregnancy. They would have driven around 31,000 extra miles, emitting an additional 12.2 metric tons of CO2, equivalent to adding about 3 more gas-powered passenger vehicles on the road that year. That is the story of just one of the 107 maternity units and 8 rural hospitals that closed between 2021 and 2022 in the US alone. And of course, hospital obstetrics itself has a significant and well-studied ecological footprint. The solution to all these issues may be supporting the proliferation of those whose work was demonized and nearly eliminated by the biomedical system that is now neglecting rural areas. These midwives. Midwife-led birth center and home birth is demonstrably safe with low-risk pregnancies, even in rural and under-resourced settings. And we see huge improvements in outcome when the provider has the same cultural background as the birthing parent, as when the midwife is from the same community that they're serving. This isn't just a fantasy. For example, some Inuit villages have successfully reintroduced traditional birth practices and rematriated birth, setting up local midwifery education programs and services with excellent results. Complications do occur, and there will always be some births that need high-level care in a hospital setting. But when the default expectation is birth close to home, one benefit is less time on the road. Further, the low intervention midwifery model of care is inherently more environmentally friendly than hospital obstetrics, which tend to over-rely on wasteful medical and surgical interventions. And there are even trickle-down effects. Parents choosing home birth recommended by a midwife in any setting are more likely to breastfeed, which leads to better outcomes for parent and child and has a smaller ecological footprint than human milk substitutes. It's an easy win-win if you're interested in birth equity and sustainability.
So the next talk by Faizan Saif, and the title is Building Capacity for Underserved Communities Through Local Energy Action Networks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Faizan, and I'll be presenting about the local energy action networks and how we can use them to build capacity in Maine. And it's part of a larger study that we are conducting, and some of the work has already been shared with you guys, by my colleagues, Sonia and Jasmine, so thank you so much for that. So when I talk about local energy action networks, something that comes into our mind is WECAN, that is Vermont Energy Climate and Action Network. And they have been working in Vermont for the past 20 years, providing different kind of assistance to the communities, such as financial, technical, and providing educational opportunities to their community so they can improve their community resilience and they can build their capacity. So I think that was something that Dr. Sharon had in her mind when she started planning for a lean for Maine 4 or 5 years ago. And she has collaborated with different community organizations, with community members and different community action groups to envision what we can say is Maine Can. And we were lucky enough to launch the lean in Maine this year at Maine Sustainability and Water Conference. And I was lucky enough to lead the breakout session at that time. And I had some really amazing conversation with people from all around the Maine, and they have been running their organization in their own capacity and how they can, envisioning how they envision our Maine Can to be and what kind of resources they want us to provide their communities. So this map indicates some of the community members or community organizations that are already a part of our Maine Can network. And I'm pretty sure in the future, we will be extending this network all around the Maine with our outreach team that are doing amazing. And also this is a part of a larger ethnographic study that we are conducting under the same EPA grant that Sonia talked about. And in that, we are trying to examine the benefits, the challenges, and the opportunities and effectiveness of leans in supporting the renewable energy efficiency adoption by the underserved communities, individuals, and the government of underserved communities. So when I talk about lean and what we are really envisioning is we want our main can to be proactive, having targeted interventions and providing peer-to-peer learning opportunities to the community members through all the network members that we're going to have in our network. So they can provide them with tools and resources that they can utilize to strengthen their community resilience. And moving ahead, they will be able to build their community in the way they want it to be. And with all the things that are going on, and I feel this network will be a real strength for the communities of Maine. So far we have like 76 responses, and if any of you want to be a part of our Maine, you can scan the QR code and fill out a form to become a member. And the good thing is you don't have to be an organization to become a part of our Maine network. You can be an individual who wants to bring a change for their community. So we have like these 4 different categories throughout. So we have municipal or tribal government, we have community-based organization, we have other supporting individual entities, and also citizen group or communities in our network so far. That's what we're getting. And this is just a snapshot of our website that Dr. Kreska has been working on for the past few months, and I'm sure in a month or 2 we are going to make it live, and then you all will be able to access whatever we have resources there. So how this lean really motivated me regarding my own thesis is I wanted to understand the challenges that the communities are facing at community level and what benefits are there. And also like the envision of Maine about equity and capacity building really motivated me to conduct special analysis, and through that I will be able to identify different trends and different disparities that exist within the Maine. And I feel like my thesis can also complement Maine work because I'll be able to, through my analysis, special analysis, find out the targeted areas that are in more need of our outreach. So with that, we will be able to, I think, put more effort in a more targeted way, and that will benefit us. So that is something we have envisioned, and I feel going ahead, we will be able to achieve what we have been planning. But thank you so much.
Notice that there's a lot of collaboration here, and the next talk is one where 2 folks are going to talk. The title of their talk is Sustaining Food Waste Education in Maine through Collaborative Student-Led Research. And the 2 speakers are William Brenneman and Kathryn Busko.
So Kathryn and I are student researchers with Food Rescue Maine, both working on food waste education, which is just one of 6 solutions that our group focuses on to the problem of food waste. But even though we're both working on food waste education, our approaches till now have been disparate. Kathryn spent the summer revamping Food Rescue Maine's social media presence and web communications. I joined the team this fall to work on the Maine school cafeteria food waste study, we'll talk more about. But both the school cafeteria food waste study and Food Rescue Maine's online presence are limited in scope and reach. But we think they have the potential to be complementary and expand. So in the spirit of the Mitchell Center's commitment to transdisciplinary scholarship, we started working together this term to address this by interviewing Maine nutrition directors and putting their insights into practice in creative ways. We'll give you some food waste facts that highlight the scale of the food waste problem. We'll explain why education is so important to our project and to Maine school nutrition directors. Next, we'll describe the planning of the upcoming school cafeteria food waste study, the new goals and tactics we'll be pursuing. And then Kathryn will describe how we can utilize our website and wealth of insights from nutrition directors to enable schools to reduce food waste long past our study into the future. So the amount of food wasted everywhere is truly shocking. Take in some of these figures, and increasingly, the food waste problem is being framed as a massive contributor to climate change, intensifying methane emissions and ecologically devastating leachate. Education matters. Maine school nutrition directors agree food waste education is vital to providing students with the why. Why should I care about the food waste issue? Why should I get involved in my school's efforts to reduce waste? And why I should think twice before throwing food in the trash. But for many Maine nutrition directors, they're on their own when it comes to bringing this needed education to students, especially at the elementary school level. So in response to this, the Maine School Cafeteria Food Waste Study piloted in 2023. The study was Food Rescue Maine's foray into collaborative work with Maine nutrition directors. The study basics include 2 months of school lunch waste data tracking, student educational interventions, purchases of useful foodware and equipment to facilitate waste reduction, and more. This year, we're getting started early and having bi-weekly meetings with participating nutrition directors, which is schools listed there. These meetings have produced new goals and new tactics. We're developing methods to evaluate what students are learning through our interventions. We're going beyond plate waste to tackle kitchen food waste. We're measuring breakfast waste in addition to lunch. We're connecting schools to composting and recycling services. We're purchasing bulk milk dispensers to reduce liquid waste. But all guided by a holistic look at school food programs. The idea being to establish where each school is at with regards to waste and moving from there.
Through many years of working directly with our school stakeholders, we have developed numerous resources, which you can see on this slide. Some of those include posters, kid-friendly recipes, worksheets, curriculum packages, and so on and so forth. So the next step for us is to organize and expand these materials. We recognize that many Maine schools are already doing terrific work to reduce food waste, and the goal for this toolkit is to support them and provide resources, whether they are at the beginning stages of the food waste reduction process or well on their way. We will model our toolkit based on examples from other organizations, including the Natural Resource Council of Maine and the World Wildlife Fund. The big difference in our toolkit is in the audience. We've looked over these materials and we've noticed that they are aimed at groups like Food Rescue Maine, which want to implement a study rather than being made with the limitations, regulations, and organization of Maine School in mind. We have a school food waste advisory board. And in working with our stakeholders, we realized that fundamentally they want to know where they are in their food waste reduction journey and what the next step is. The components include an evaluation to let schools know where they are, a checklist, which is a comprehensive list of strategies to let them know what the next steps are, examples to highlight the work of our amazing partners, and resources, which will consist of extra materials for people who have the time and energy to learn more. Ultimately, the goal is to increase the reach of the findings that we found in our previous school food waste studies. And beyond the classroom, education continues beyond the classroom. So all kids will eventually graduate, and we want to make sure that when they do, we are reinforcing the concepts that they are learning. This ties into my primary work of researching and building Food Rescue Maine's online presence through our social media and website, and you can see some of the work here. Thank you.
So the last talk in the series, and let's share. We're lightning talks. Lightning strike in this way. Is Solomon Agbesi is giving a talk titled "Solar Bans in the U.S. Assessing Spread Drivers and Possible Solutions." Do you need help?
Hi, everybody. My name is Solomon Agbesi, and this is part of my thesis. I'm a second-year grad student in school. So what I'm trying to do in my thesis is to assess the spread of solar bans all over US. So part of my project will also include a special focus on the New England region and assess the drivers of these solar bans and also explore possible solutions. And this is advised by my able professors Warren, Klein, and Noble. So I'm asking 3 questions in this project. What are the social and economic factors that account for the rejection, opposition, or a total ban of solar in part of the US? And I'm looking at whether a ban in one community is able to influence a ban in another community. and also explore some solutions that can be adopted to mitigate these solar bans. Of course, solar is one of the renewables that will help us to mitigate the issues about climate change. So if there are oppositions to that, then we know that we are not winning the battle against climate change. So as part of the research, I've been conducting some literature review and some themes have been coming up regards to some social and economic factors that I'll be testing in my research. So there are issues about aesthetics and location of these bands as well as economic factors. And there are issues also about political influence, fairness and equity, and also lack of community engagement when it comes to these installations. So I'll be running some regressions to see how this affects the bands. I also do some spatial proximity effect analysis, looking at whether there is a possibility of a ban in one community when the next community when there is ban in this community. And also I'll be conducting some interviews to actually see some policy reforms and advocacy and address some improve some things that we can do to improve community engagement. So as part of the preliminary analysis, I'm analyzing the data by Robert Bryce, and it's ironic that the man's data is he is against renewables actually, but he's putting together a data of bans in the US when it comes to wind and solar. So I just put together the solar bans. And if you see, if you can see on the map, these are counties that there's some kind of opposition. And these green dots are showing where there are the towns or cities that there are kind of opposition. And it's mostly concentrated in the Ohio state. So it's really telling us a story, and you can see that they are mostly clustered. So it begins to tell us a story that there might be more spread in other communities if nothing is done about it. So I'm also looking at the Maine Community Sustainable Energy Survey because I'm working with Dr. Noblet and client. And if you look at these, we see that a question which was asked about the kind of large projects that is proposed or constructed in communities, and we see that solar leads the chart. So it's really telling us that probably it is not about them rejecting it per se, but there are issues that needs to be addressed. And when you look at the right pane, you can see that amongst the community engagement, people have been asked how the community has been engaged, and leading that is that people are not even sure whether their communities have been engaged, and that is really followed by minimal community engagement, which is telling us a story. And also, we see that environmental harm is leading the concerns of many communities when it comes to these projects, which solar is leading, as we saw in the earlier slide. And we have various kinds of things that the communities are proposing that should be done, like documents that inform them about the processes. There should be some kind of vote and some kind of benefit to the communities. So moving on, I'll be conducting interviews with energy experts and also community leaders. The reason why I'm doing that is to get first-hand data. So this is where I'll focus more on the New England region. So all the states I'll get energy experts from, and these are some of the questions that I'll be asking to get some insights from the communities. Thank you very much.
So here's my colleague, Linda Silka, if you didn't already know her. Come on up.
Great.
And I'm going to let her facilitate any kind of Q&A and discussion people would like to do.
First, let's give ourselves another hand. really, really good. And we're not gonna try and get questions from the online audience because there are people right here. And when you have an answer to the question that that I'm asking you, run up here real quick and give us the answer. So the first question is, you heard from lots of other people about what they're doing. How are you gonna bring what they're doing into what you're doing? So a couple of people, how are you gonna take, you were so excited about, you're so excited about what you're doing and you heard some great things. 1 or 2 examples, what you're gonna do with them? Is that a hard question? Okay, let's ask another one. Who do you especially want to learn from what you did? So run up here and say, who? Is it do you want to have the people who pick up garbage to learn from what you're doing? Do you want to have legislators? Do you want to have teachers? Do you want to have kids that are the future, that are 5 years old? So somebody come up and say what you want. Don't be shy.
I want people who have waste resources to know what I'm doing, because I went on a tour the other day to a chocolate factory. And I said, what's your waste? And they said chocolate husk. And I said, let me have it. I want to go back to the lab with it. So I want every waste generator to know about my research.
So waste generators and have them know. Anybody else want to say something? Yeah, you can talk real loud and I'll repeat it.
So I want the legislators to learn what Sonia mentioned, that they have to communicate in a language that is, understandable by all the community members. They have to include those words that are gonna create an impact on them.
Right,
So I
so
think that-
legislators really need to talk in a language that the community will understand so that it will make a difference.
Yes.
Somebody else had their hand up? Okay, we'll go on to another one. When you think about your future, what's next for you? What's one example of what's next for you about how you're gonna change the world because you're doing this kind of research?
I've been
Talk
inspired
loud.
because I think that most of the ban is due to lack of engagement of the communities. So right now, I'm trying to even move away from mainstream economics to really do energy stuff in the future by looking at how communities can be engaged so that we can curb these solar bans.
So how do we get communities engaged? So instead of using language maybe that people don't understand, what do we do? And that really speaks to my heart. I'm a community psychologist and I want to work with you on that. I think that's really interesting. So when you think of going to a grade school and trying to have the youth there understand what you're doing, what's one thing that you would do?
Okay, William.
There's a lot, but I think, it's about, at least with kids and with young people, it's about sort of showing them how they're a part of the world, how they can contribute to change that they can see, or that they can, we can measure, or that in some way makes a difference, I think.
So that they can see how they can make a difference, that
They
that
can
they're
see
a part of it.
themselves in the food system, in the
See
community,
themselves.
and that
Yep,
their work
yep.
matters.
You said that like you've done that.
I-
Have you?
A bit.
Okay, so what if we wanted to follow you around? Could we do that? Could we see you doing it?
Sure, I'm going up to Presque Isle next week, if you wanna tag along. Maybe help
Road
them
trip.
serve lunch.
Okay, we've got time for one last one. I'm gonna ask you, how have you been changed by your research that you're doing?
Go ahead, Sonia.
Community work is really hard and it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication, and I admire everybody who does it, and we all need to support each other in that effort because it's hard and it looks easy because we think we'll work together and we have this like broader human psyche, but it's hard. So, and that's okay.
And community work is hard and we gotta figure it out and do it and understand that that's a part of it. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I think that if you don't reach out to people, you're not going to understand them. So it's good to actually reach out to people, get to stand in their position and get the information you want from them.
Very good. Yeah, that we gotta talk to them, understand it, understand what they want. I grew up in Iowa. That's a farming state. All of my relatives were farmers. Except my family. We lived in Ames where Iowa State was. And my granddad, my aunts, my uncles, they all complained about those cooperative extension people who would come and tell them what they should do with their farm. They needed to hear what the cooperative extension people were saying, but they thought that that was just wrong, that they were coming and telling them what to do. So we've got to find ways to have the knowledge that you're creating and that you're developing, having ways to have it work for the people who are going to use it and have them be a part of helping to create the knowledge so they know that it's trustworthy. Okay, let's give each other another big hand.